For the watch, Wicks slashed at him again. This time Jon caught his wrist and bent his arm backwards until he dropped the dagger. The gangling steward backed away, his hands upraised as if to say, "Not me! It was not me!" Men were screaming. Jon reached for Longclaw, but his fingers had grown stiff and clumsy. Somehow he could not seem to get the sword free of its scabbard. Then Bowen Marsh stood there before him, tears running down his cheeks. "For the watch!" He punched Jon in the belly. When he pulled his hand away, the dagger stayed there where he had buried it. Jon fell to his knees. He found the dagger's hilt and wrenched it free. In the cold night air, the wound was smoking. "Ghost!" he whispered. Pain washed over him. "Stick them with the pointy end." When the third dagger took him between the shoulder blades, he gave a grunt and fell face first into the snow. He never felt the fourth knife, only the cold. In this video, I want to discuss everything related to Jon Snow's death in A Dance with Dragons, and also whether he will be coming back in Winds of Winter. Now, before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 420. Get it? Also, this is the most important part. Make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on, so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video throughout this long night. Also, special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family: Brick23, Bloody Tyrant, Leah Hendrickson, Angie Delehanty, Nancy Tockstein, Marilyn Miller, Fred Wicks, BEL-a-Donna, Catertot, and Joe Swag. Y'all are awesome, and if you are watching this video and interested in joining my Patreon, check the link down below in the description. Now, for those who aren't familiar, I'm gonna quickly discuss some of the events that's going on in Jon Snow's last few chapters in Dance, and then we'll sort of get to my theory, or speculation rather. Now, one of the big things that Jon is doing in his last couple chapters in Dance, this sort of like cements his role as, you know, becoming the Lord Commander, is the execution of Janos Slynt. Basically, Jon orders Janos Slynt, who, you know, actively took hand in the beheading of Lord Eddard Stark, his father, or who he thinks is his father. He basically tells him that he's going to garrison the abandoned Greyguard. Obviously, Slynt refuses, and he continues to do so for a while. So Jon orders him to be hanged for insubordination, but then Jon gets some time to think about it. And he's like, you know what? I remember how my father taught me. Those who carry the sentence must swing the sword. So Jon Snow beheads Janos Slynt. And like on the show, this action sort of cements his position with Stannis as Lord Commander. Stannis realizes that, hey, he's kind of coming into his own. Now, one important thing to note here is that by this point in the Dance with Dragons, Jon Snow is sort of sending away all of his friends. For instance, he sends his homies from Castle Black. He sends Grin, Piper to Eastwatch, and Halder and Totter to the Shadow Tower. And those are more so characters in the books. Halder and Totter, I mean. Obviously, Pip and Grin, who died in the show, were characters in the books, and Jon sent them away to Eastwatch. Now, as far as sending away Samwell Tarly in the books, that's actually Jon Snow's idea. And there's a bit of a plot. Basically, Mance Rayder is being held captive at Castle Black, and Stannis wants to sacrifice him and burn him. Melisandre glamours Rattleshirt to look like Mance, and then Rattleshirt is actually sort of like being held captive by Jon. They're like sparring, and at one point Rattleshirt's actually bested Jon in the sparring match, but the real Rattleshirt ends up getting killed in place of Mance, and Melisandre had glamored him. Jon didn't know about Melisandre glamoring Rattleshirt to look like Mance and Mance to look like Rattleshirt, so when she reveals this plan, Jon is kind of shocked. But what Jon ends up doing in response is because he knows that Stannis is likely going to try to burn Mance's child, so he has them switched out and then sends Samwell Gilly, Mance's baby, and Aemon, who Jon also suspects Stannis will want to burn once he finds out that Aemon is the son of a dragon, or basically King's blood. And just as a side note, you'll notice, and I've said this in a lot of my videos, that Jon Snow, Jon Snow, is super intelligent. When you're reading his mind's dialogue, you realize this dude is a witty, sarcastic, and a bit of an asshole. As far as difference in characters, in the books, he's more willing to plot behind the scenes, whereas Jon Snow is more so like the honorable Ned. His book counterpart is way more intelligent and fits more in line with the theme of other characters and how they act in the books, because real humans who aren't robots or cyborgs actually show emotion, and sometimes let the better of those emotions, or those worst emotions rather, take a hold of them and allow them to influence their decisions. decisions. The show version of Jon Snow is pretty plain, black and white. He always does the right thing, or what he thinks in his mind is the right thing. And the way that it's written, us as the show watchers believe that Jon Snow is always right. Now, we don't actually agree with him all the time, but for the most part, Jon Snow's decisions on the show are honorable and led by that. And just sort of relating back to what I had mentioned about how intelligent Jon is, just for instance, he's the one who actually negotiates with Tychonosaurus. That's the envoy to the Iron Bank of Braavos. In the show, that was obviously Davos who did that. But another thing Jon does is decide to keep some whites that he finds, or some potential whites that he finds in the ice cells, and wants to lock them up. So that way when they turn, Jon could sort of study them without actually having them harm anybody. So Jon Snow successfully convinces Tychonosaurus to send ships from the Iron Bank of Braavos. He also decides to send Val, who's not really a character in the TV show, but he sends her to sort of treat with Tormund Giantsbane. He plans to station wildlings in abandoned castles along the wall so that they can reinforce it and get ready for the others. All of these decisions play a part in Bowen Marsh and Wick Whittlestick's, and in my opinion, Selyse Florence role in having Jon Snow executed. And I'll get more detail into Selyse in a second. But another plot or action that Jon takes that sort of gets him killed, and this is the major one, is during Melisandre's time at the wall, she tells Jon Snow and actually warns him of several visions. One of them being daggers in the dark. He also says that Melisandre sees his sister, or someone that he thinks is his sister, arriving at Castle Black, and when this happens, it's actually Alice Karstark, who explains to Jon Snow that she's basically running away from a forced marriage to Cregan Karstark, who is her uncle and only really wants to marry her because she's the heir to Karhold. Jon finds out about this and decides to arrange the marriage between Alice Karstark and Sigorn, who is a wildling, and the two of them together will establish House Thin, which kind of helps legitimize the wildlings. If they have a house and a name, well, then eventually they will become a part of Westeros, and better yet, the North. House Karstark is a pretty high up house in the North, so if you can marry an established wildling to an established northern house, well, then that makes their south of the wall and integrated into northern society. That makes their claim that much more stronger. And it's funny, since we're talking about it, that's something the show kind of lost a little bit of. In the books, marriages and children are what sort of secure pacts and allow peace to happen. Now, eventually, Val ends up coming back with Tormund. Remember, I mentioned earlier that Val is sent by Jon to go and get Tormund. Now, when they arrive, Jon has to convince Torgon Flint and Brandon Norrie that it is extremely important that Tormund pass through south of the wall with at least 3,000 wildlings that he has with him. Now, without having to explain several thousand years of bad blood, basically everybody at Castle Black, since the White Walkers and the others hadn't really been seen in thousands of years, their main goal is to keep the wildlings north and stop them from raiding south. Well, Jon, who discovered the importance of the others and the Great War to come, decided, no, we need to let these homies pass south because they basically are us. And remember, Jon's time with the Free Folk allowed them to realize that they are just a people. They just were born on the wrong side of the wall. So Jon wants to bring them down, and in convincing them to let Tormund come through with his 3,000 wildlings, that was sort of the last straw that broke the camel's back. Now, this is where things really start heating up. Jon actually receives word that Cotter Pike, who he had sent to Hardhome, is trapped there, and he has no way of getting out. Jon plans to rescue Cotter at Hardhome, but the pink letter arrives, which is the infamous letter from Ramsay frickin' Bolton, and he claims that Stannis has been defeated. Mance, who he sent, and I forgot to sort of mention that, basically, Melisandre, after explaining to Jon that she had glamored Rattleshirt to look like Mance and Mance to look like Rattleshirt, that since Rattleshirt, the real Mance, was in his, company, one way to convince Jon Snow to join her and Stannis' side was to capture Jon Snow's sister, and the pink letter actually mentions that Jon Snow's sister, Arya, is being forced to marry Ramsay. Jon doesn't realize that it's not actually Arya, it's Jean Poole, one of Sansa's childhood friends, so when Jon sees that pink letter, it obviously fires him up. And let me backtrack a bit. It's actually Mance and Melisandre Melisandre who are plotting. Stannis is unaware of this. Melisandre realizes that she has the wrong like she's been following the wrong person, and when she's having these visions, she asks to see Azor Ahai, and it's not Stannis, it's actually Jon Snow, and he's surrounded by skulls, and she realizes in that moment that Jon Snow is a lot more important than she had thought. So her and Mance sort of plot, and the way to get Jon Snow on their side is by, sending Mance to rescue his sister. So when Jon gets this pink letter, he reads that Ramsay has defeated Stannis, Ramsay has captured Mance, and that he still has his sister, and he's married to her. So obviously Jon Snow does what Jon Snow should want to do, and that's march south and obviously go take back his historical ancestral family home from the TikTok of a person known as Ramsay Bolton. Now obviously Jon will need men, and decides not to order the men at Castle Black and the wildlings to help him, but to ask them. And after giving a rousing speech, Jon is able to convince every single person who was in the Shield Hall, most of them, to march south with him against House Bolton. The problem is, that right there was the nail in the coffin. The upper leadership in Castle Black did not want that to happen, and in a rustle and a confusion that happens outside, basically, they piss off a giant who ends up killing Sir Patrick in the most excruciating way possible. Basically explodes him on the side of a wall, or at least that's what happens in the show. In the books, he sort of peels him like a child peels flowers, or the petals off of a flower. It's intense. But while this is happening, Jon runs outside and he's like, no, you guys need to chill out. This giant is gonna rage out and kill us all. Please, put away your blades. And as soon as Jon says that, the asshole Bowen Marsh slices at his throat. Jon sort of tilts his neck a little bit so it doesn't cut as deep, but as soon as Jon grabs his neck, his hand wells up with blood. So he obviously clipped him. Then Bowen Marsh goes in to try to stab him again. Jon grabs his wrist and de-daggers the bastard, but then another one catches him. And this time it's buried deep in his gut. Jon falls to the ground, bleeding lifeless, and he never really feels the fourth dagger, it's said. He just dies and drifts off. And in my opinion, just like everybody else who has read those scenes in that book, in Jon's last few chapters in the dance, he's gonna come back. The question is, will he be the same? And in my opinion, no, he will not. The fact that he's trying to say something and all that blood fills in his throat and he's not able to really get out that word and he just sort of grunts lets me know that Jon may not have a speaking future in Winds of Winter. You all let me know what you think or how you think Jon will be changed when he inevitably comes back. I think there's a small chance that Ghost, the reason why he says Ghost is not because he wargs into him, but really Ghost comes up and, kills Bowen Marsh, probably kills everybody that had something to do with stabbing him, and then Melisandre will obviously come in and rescue him. But you all let me know if you think Jon Snow, how much he will be changed down below in the comment section. We do know, and I'm going to get into more detail on that in a second, but we do know that Catelyn Stark can barely speak, as she was floating in the river for like a few days before she was resurrected. But zombies, when they come back, and whites when they come back, Jon Snow being a fire white, Lady Stoneheart being a fire white, when they come back from the dead, they are not the same. So to summarize, before we move into the final topic of this video, which is obviously going to be fire whites, I feel like what happens right after Jon Snow's death? Ghost will appear. That's why Jon Snow sort of mummers Ghost, and he will tear the men to shreds, killing all but leaving a few alive. Maybe Bowen Marsh is crippled and sort of just left there bleeding out. Then Melisandre will immediately come up, and she's said to have men stationed outside of her room. She's at Castle Black. She will have those men pick up Jon Snow's body, and then she will perform the last kiss. This is what I think will happen to Jon Snow in most likely his first chapter in Winds of Winter. Or wait, the dead don't get chapters anymore. Catelyn Stark, Lady Stoneheart, has yet to have another POV since she died. Now, speaking of Lady Stoneheart, I really want to focus on how she changed after she died. Like, once she came back, what aspects of her characters changed the most? Because in Game of Thrones Season 6, when Jon Snow comes back in Episode 2, the biggest thing that everyone was wondering what was going to happen next is how in the hell was he going to change? Was he going to be more ruthless? Was he going to be more cutthroat? Was he going to be more playing the game and more like his book counterpart? That's not really a thing. He lynched Ollie and moved on with it. Jon Snow in the TV show basically was the same person he was before he died. That is, however, not the case with Lady Stoneheart. Now, it is noted that death has changed Catelyn to the point where she's less gracious and forgiving than she was in her actual human life. She becomes consumed with a desire for vengeance. And basically anybody who she thinks has betrayed her house, her family, her sons, will die. Now, as far as appearance, she was basically water pruning for 3 days before she was brought back, so her flesh has become as soft as pudding and turned to the color of curdled milk, with gray-green mottling and brown blooms of decay. Half of her hair is gone, and the rest of it that it's still there is dry, brittle, and breaking off. Her eyes look like two red pits burning in the shadows. Also, the wounds that she received at the Red Wedding had not healed. She basically, Walder Frey was going to keep her as a prisoner, but she went insane. She killed his son and then scratched her face out and clawed her eyes out. So Walder has one of his sons kill her, and they tossed her body naked in the river. So while she was like sitting in there naked, her skin becomes the color of curdled milk. That's when her hair falls out. And where she clawed her face out, this is the most terrifying aspect of her. Basically, her face is shredded to pieces, and it's like hanging in like strips coming off. It's disgusting. Like, you could actually see through it and see her entire jawline and teeth and parts of her skull. It's so brutal. The books are so amazing. If you have not read them, please go read them right now. But getting back to my main point, which is how much she has changed, one of the last things that she was doing before she died has literally continued into her afterlife. That purpose, that drive, that's probably what allowed her to be resurrected. In my opinion, not everyone can be resurrected by the Lord of Light or by R'hllor. Obviously, you have to be a chosen one of his, but the way you become a chosen one of his is by having an uncompleted purpose. Like, basically, Catelyn is a spirit of vengeance, and the only thing that drives her is what her last purpose was, which was trying to save her son Robb at the Red Wedding. She was trying to save her house. All of the months leading up to her death, she was literally trying to figure out a way to make her house and bring her children back together, bring her home back. And now in her afterlife, that's turned into this distorted perception of reality. And literally every single person that she runs into that's not directly with House Stark or with House Tully, she hangs them. So when we apply that same logic to Jon Snow, when he comes back, one of the last things he was doing was sort of making the free folk integrated into Westerosi northern society and also marching on House motherfucking Bolton. So I believe when Jon Snow comes back, the way that he's going to be changed is he's not really going to put up with anybody's shit. He's going to not necessarily kill people left and right like Catelyn, but his main focus will be liberating House Stark from the control of House Bolton, maybe freeing the North. Jon will full on embrace the role of King of the North when he comes back as a White, because that will knock that aspect or the ties that he has to Castle Black and being the Lord Commander, that'll knock that sort of into perspective. He was kind of willing to go and give all that up before he died, so obviously in death, in his afterlife, he's going to want to continue that goal and that purpose. And I feel like one of the first things Jon Snow will do when he comes back is probably sleep with Melisandre. That almost happened before he died, so once he comes back, that inhibition or that lack of just jumping into and just letting go of stuff is going to be gone. I think Jon's going to be less about the morals and what he holds to believe true, and more about the instant pleasure now and the gratification that he needs in the immediate future, because he's been sort of pushing that back. Now, one of the last things I want to mention in this video is that Jon's last two chapters begin with R'hllor, which is Melisandre yelling it out. She sings a lot in the books, and then also let them die. What's interesting is he's actually told by Aemon, who is the maester at Castle Black, he's told by him to let the boy die and let the man be born. All of these iterations are all of these, I just used that wrong word in the wrong context there, but all of these things, in my opinion, are leading to the fact that once Jon Snow's death is sort of his birth into manhood. Like, literally what I think all of this is alluding at is Jon Snow has to die in order to become the person he was meant to be. That's kind of a theme in the books. A lot of these main POVs seemingly have this greater destiny that they have to be willing to sacrifice so much in order to fulfill that destiny. They may not be the same person by the time that they reach that destination. So to wrap this whole video up, yes, I think Jon Snow will be coming back. Yes, I think he will still continue to get POV chapters. The main difference is that when Jon Snow was killed, he's literally just left on ice, and his resurrection person is not that far in the same vicinity and can resurrect him right away. The reason why Catelyn came back so disturbed, so disgusting looking, not able to talk, probably so less human, is because she spent more time dead. She was rotting in a river. Jon's it's a heavy theme in the books that ice preserves and fire destroys. Well, Jon Snow is literally on ice, having his body preserved, and I feel like when he comes back, he's going to be the most well intact Firewalker or Firewhite that we have in the A Song of Ice and Fire story. Well, alright. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 420. Also, make sure to subscribe, and this is the most important part. Make sure you have your notifications turned on, so that way you'll get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout this long night. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.